Hello. Yes, it seems to be good. Hello. Hello, and welcome to SCI Peace Chat. Sorry for a little delay. There was a technical problem. Also, welcome on my roof terrace in Antwerp, where I'm gonna record this peace chat tonight. And I'm gonna talk about how we can nurture culture of peace through projects or educational activities. My name is Alena. I work at the International Office of SCI, Service Civil International. And the core of what we do is to promote a culture of peace by organizing international volunteering projects. And tonight, I'd like to focus on some key elements which I believe are essential for volunteer projects to be successful in achieving or contributing to culture of peace. And in short, if you don't have much time to watch this video and the live event, I believe for these projects to be successful, they need to have three elements. They need to be experience-based. They need to have a very strong intercultural dimension, and they should be linked to peace in a tangible way. But before I will go a little bit more to those three elements, I would first like to discuss a little bit why actually we should promote a culture of peace and what does culture of peace actually mean. I know for many people it's very abstract, but the culture of peace is an alternative to a culture of war and violence. And the culture of peace is based on education for peace, respect for human rights, participation, tolerance, and a free flow of information. I think for myself, a great example of building an alternative to the culture of war goes as far as to the founder of SCI, our organization, Pierre Serceau, who about 100 years ago refused to pay his army tax in Switzerland, and he actually ended up in jail for that. And he did it because he did not want to support war out of his conviction, and he did not want to pay money and out of his money support war. And instead, he proposed an international civilian service, and that was supposed to be a counterweight of the military service, which was back then obligatory for everybody, I think, or more or less, at least in the countries in Europe, it was obligatory. And he proposed it as a counterweight to nationalism. And this 100 years ago, civilian service was quite an innovative idea when you think about it. Actually, quite revolutionary. You need to imagine the harsh reality of the post-World War I, where the nations that were fighting on different sides did not really like each other. And he brought a group, an international group of people, including Germans, to a village in France where he started his first work camp. And all this idea of the service, civil or civilian service, became really popular in the 20th century. And it was booming, really, and also recognized. And I think the best example of this recognition is also that the international volunteering projects have been supported financially by the European Union, for instance, for almost 30 years now. Also in other countries, they're supported. And you might ask, why does it actually work? And I believe there are different elements why these projects work. There's an international dimension that brings a very strong intercultural experience. There's a practical work, so people come and they do something for local community, and that strengthens the bond between people in quite a strong way. I think it also creates often a very direct and visible impact on local level, because something has been done or finished and that is visible. It shows solidarity, it increases understanding, cooperation, and it often really highlights the positive potential within the society, which I personally find really empowering. And for me, empowering is really the key of the thing. At the beginning, I mentioned some elements which I think are essential to volunteer projects to be successful. Said I think they need to be experience based. You need to be there physically, have that experience yourself. There has to be the intercultural dimension, and they need to be linked to peace in a tangible way. And while I think that the experience and the intercultural dimension is quite easy nowadays to organize in a project, the link to peace is what I see often really missing. And those are maybe some of the challenges we could focus on that can make our projects a little stronger. So if people participate at a work camp or a seminar or an educational activity, it is often really difficult for them to see a broader picture and to actually realize how does it contribute to peace, what I'm doing here. And this is something I face quite often in my work, and I'm curious if you do as well. And this in this event, in this live chat, you can also ask questions or say some opinions you have or share your feedback. So that's the first hint for me. I'm very curious if you're having the same experience. What I often really face in my work is that people find peace really abstract. It's such a concept that is so difficult to understand. And I would say people also don't really value peace unless peace around them is being challenged in one or other way. Um, to me, it feels little similar to health. Like normally you're healthy, and that that's the standard. But often only when you're sick you start valuing your health, and somehow this feels very similar to peace. Once you have it, um, you're okay. Yeah, that's normal. But it actually isn't. And I think I'm really lucky living in this time where I'm one of the people who can say, I live in peace. What is there to peace? And there are many people on this planet who don't live in this luxury. But still, I believe it's really important to keep on working on peace education or education for peace. And I believe once you recognize peace as an essential value, similar to health, which I think more or less are a little bit linked to health, because we were sometimes sick and it did not feel so well. You can also start breaking peace down into pieces and choose what part you can focus on in your projects. So if we would continue a little bit with this parallel with health, I think peace is somewhat similar to keeping your body fit. So to keep it running, you need to do some essentials like moving or maintaining a balanced diet, whatever it means for you, whether it's being vegetarian or don't eating gluten, or I don't know, whatever it is for you. And it also you also need to focus on particular health problems you have. So let's say your back hurts or your shoulders, or sit at the computer and you're like, I need to do something, I need to stretch, I need to train my muscles. So I think when we organize projects and we want them to nurture a culture of peace, we need to build them on some essentials as well as we're building our health and condition. So for me, these essentials would be nonviolent communication, respecting the contribution of everyone, and creating some space for reflection and feedback. And there are for sure many other elements. I think these are really crucial. And then, similar to when your shoulders hurt or your back hurt, I think in the projects we might highlight or do a specific focus of this specific problem we see around us in our communities, in the society around us. And those problems are different for everybody. So whether you experience or you're a little upset that people so much fear diversity, or whether you're concerned about the danger of the fake news, the rising populism, the closed borders nowadays again, the lack of interest in the local policy, climate change, you name it. It's really, there are different pieces to peace, in my opinion, and we can focus on, you know, what we feel is needed in our surroundings so that the system kind of works and that we support the condition of peace. And before I give the floor to you and your questions, I also think the key is to communicate about our projects, maybe in a little bit more conscious way. And saying a little bit more why we do what we do, although it's really hard sometimes. But I often hear, actually, imagine you're inviting somebody to take part in your project, and then what you're saying is like, it's gonna be fun, there will be people from overall, we're gonna do some workshops for kids, the food is free, there's gonna be party, and that all sounds really cool, and I think people are joining and it's contributing well, like to what you wanted to do. But I think it doesn't really help them understand the essence. And some people are smart and they pick it up. And some people, it takes a while to then make it explicit also in their projects, and then, because that's how we work, we see a cool project and then we think maybe I could organize something like that as well. And I think if you hear it explicitly from somebody where you're taking part, maybe it's gonna also increase the chance that the people who will also do something because you inspired them will also be as explicit, and together we're gonna talk a little bit more about peace and why is it important for us and what are the different pieces of it. And I think that would be really cool. So yeah, that was my Facebook Live. You can be enjoying my roof terrace while I will check what's happening in the chat. Love from Serbia, thank you, Leah. Oh, I see Zahra from Sri Lanka. Very nice to see you here, Zahra. And some other people. Sonia Baraj is listening to me. Okay, so does anybody has any questions? I'm gonna see. Oh, thank you, Simon, that you think it sounds really wise. Not so sure about it, but great you think similar. Okay, there's a question. In your experience, do peace projects make more sense in some countries than in others? Thank you for the question. It's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I would tend to say no. Obviously, there are projects that support peace in a, maybe not in the lighter way, but I think peace projects are really needed in the countries where there's war, obviously. But if we don't take this category and we leave it out, because that should be kind of exceptional situation that there's war, although it's not. It's just really so cool. But let's say in Europe, if I would be thinking, not so sure about it. I think there's more attention for peace projects in the countries where people experience some conflict or some troubles in the society. And I think they actually might be valuing peace projects a little bit more because they're still aware, they still remember that this was happening, and they maybe see the consequences better, or maybe they understand the root of the problem and why it was happening, and now they're trying to do something around it, that it doesn't happen again. So I think that is really important. But now, would I think it's not important to do a peace project in the country where there's no conflict? I don't think so. I think it's really important to it's like maintaining your condition and keeping that balanced diet. I think, you might be working on different elements, but I think the very essential element, like nonviolent communication, the skills to transform conflict, for instance, but also maybe the ones we should get better at, like the media literacy, so that we can bring some counter narrative to fake news. I think it's really important because I feel fake news, for instance, are all over the place, meaning this world. I hope that's answering your question, Esther. Hello, Mauritius. Hello, India. Yeah, Simon's commenting that it might be quite hard to see peace, that is not only the problem of our politicians, but that we can work on it in small scale. Yeah, indeed. Maybe also depends how you look at it. If you think these are problems of your politicians, because maybe those problems are also our problems, like if I think nowadays, like, corona measures, that's a problem of our politicians. I mean, they need to be busy with it. On the other hand, I'm so much, affected by it that I think it's also our problem. So, and after all, we are the people who are electing the politicians. So, but I understand that sometimes finding the small scale that you can do something, and also maybe choosing the right focus, or choosing your passion, where you focus more, or bringing some more diversity and connecting people who are maybe new to the community with people who maybe are a little bit conservative, and they they're not so maybe the people who would go to them and talk at the first. Or will you, in your case, organize a Wikimedia for peace, for instance, if you're interested in IT and do something there. Yeah, but it's difficult, I think, to choose the focus, especially I think if you're not very much rooted in your local community and you have to look for certain area where you would like to work. And I'm reading the comment of Willy. Thank you for the comment, Willy. And Willy saying that he thinks that every event where people are cooperating for a good cause brings some peace. However, in an international group, it's more striking since it brings in an extra dimension. Yeah, I agree. I think the international dimension is really important. However, I believe, like 100 years ago, at least Europe looked very different. Like after the war, the nation states were quite homogenic. And so where I believe that 20th century, really the international was the key, and was kind of synonym for the intercultural as well. I think the society nowadays changed, at least in many big cities in Europe. You can find so many cultures living in one spot. Like in Antwerp, I think there are like more than 180 different people from different origins from 180 states, which is so rich. So for me, nowadays in some places I would say the interculture is kind of substituting the international. But I also believe the international dimension really kind of connects people throughout all the world, and it's really important. And there's a question about anti-militarism and peace in our international voluntary service projects. It seems to Mauro that it's getting harder to address this topic. Do you think we should focus more on this? Yeah, I quite agree with you. I um, I also somehow don't have a very strong connection with the topic, but I believe it's maybe typical to this time where, at least in Europe, there were not so many violent army conflicts, and maybe like when it's not really in your backyard, you don't see the need so strongly. I know there are many peace activists also within SCI who are still talking a lot about disarmament and other topics, but I think I don't see it living among the SCI activists, like the young generation, so much. Now, should we focus more on it, or should we go with the flow? It's always the question, right? I don't know. What do you think? And I'm reading a question of Claudia. What is a project that you worked on and you particularly liked or felt connected to? That might be hard to choose. So maybe I won't look very far, but at the moment I'm working on a project called Peace in Practice, which is a project where we're trying to develop an online learning where we would like to kind of present the education for peace we're using within SCI to empower young people all over the world, and not only young people, but everybody who's interested in education for peace, to use some of the tools and the best practices, because SCI is celebrating 100 years of existence this year, and we think we have quite some resources and best practices and methods we would like to present and have there for people to use, but in a very engaging way. And this is quite a challenge, honestly, to how do you do that? How do you put on a course on peace education that is engaging, that is kind of bringing the non-formal education and which we often do, and the group element, which I feel is very specific to SCI as well, because mostly people are volunteering in groups and learning in groups. How do you bring this to online environment? Also, seeing how difficult it is to get people's attention, if you ever started an online learning for yourself, how many of those courses did you really finish till the end? Which maybe is not really the point, nobody has to really finish our learning, but it's a very cool challenge to think about. So what's really crucial, how can we bring it down to the point? And there's a great team of people trying to think about it methodological wise, and I'm really curious what will come up, and that's something we would like to have ready by the end of this year, to somehow also have this contribution to the 100 years. similar as this book, 100 Years of SCI, you may be received in your post boxes, or you've seen, or which is really cool to have as a, you can go through. So this should be also the peace education online. And yeah, so now we really have to do it, and I'm quite excited about that project. And there will be some testing parts as well. So if anybody's interested to try out, to give some feedback, or to suggest, how we should do it, can always get in touch. That would be great. And hi from Shirin. Hello, Shirin. What was the project, the first moment that made you realize you want to be part of the peace building movement? Interesting. I'm not sure I ever really wanted to be part of the peace building movement as such. It somehow happened. I think I was also one of those people who found peace really abstract. And even when I was having a job interview to work for SCI, I was saying, yeah, well, now with the conflict in Ukraine, I think is a moment when people value peace a bit more, because we see it somehow more important. It's very close to us. I think I was also really needed some time to really come to this understanding that you can be looking for peace in your daily life, and that like every moment, you can see it or not, like in how you how you feel or how you act with others. I think nowadays actually the great peace educator for me is my 4 years old daughter. Like we're having conflicts like every parent and a child, and it's really a lesson on conflict transformation. And I have to say, I'm not always doing really well. So I still need to learn a lot. But I think for me, this moment probably where I thought like, wow, this is a cool format and I'm learning a lot, was really my first work camp. Maybe same to many people who stay dear to SCI somehow, or SCI is dear to them. I went to a work camp in Germany, to a refugee camp, and we were repairing the playground or renovating, and then partly animating the kids. And it was fun. I was 18 or 19, I don't know. And yeah, I think there were all these cool things. It was a group, interesting people. I felt we were doing something interesting. And also there was this very strong aha moment, which was, so we were renovating this playground in a refugee camp, and people were staying there. It was residential. And I could not really understand the first few days, how comes nobody's helping us? Like they are living here, their playground could use some improvement. How come these people are just like sitting there watching us and not doing much? And then we had this study session or study part where a person who was working in the refugee center came to talk to us, and he was really like kind of discussing with us how traumatized the people are, and that often this is really causing some kind of inactivity and traumatized from all the experience they have had on the way, etc. And I was 18, never realized, I never met a refugee before, I never realized it could have such an impact on their life. And so that was a big aha moment. And then by the end of the work camp, it actually happened that we kind of bonded little with the people. And so some of them came to help as well. So somebody taught me how I should paint properly. And we had this dinner together. They invited us. And it was really awesome. There was this very strong, emotional moment. And I thought, wow, this is really like making me understand how others are feeling, and it made me way more empathic, I think. Not that I would be total ignorant to people's emotion, but it was really a moment. And autumn, like after the season, I somehow start volunteering for the organization who was organizing work camps in the Czech Republic, and then yeah, that was the moment, I think. And then there are some hellos. And thank you for your questions. It's getting dark here, so I think it's maybe time to stop. It was really great to see you online. Thank you for taking part. Thank you for your questions. We're trying to do with SCI this peace chat every Thursday now. And I think next time there's going to be a chat about anti-militarism. So Mauro, if you're still here, I think in the coming week or two. And there's also another chat plan about gender and all the problematics in SCI activities, because I think compared to anti-militarism, this is something what's living a lot, at least in the European area, as far as I can see from my work. So thank you again and have a good night.